As cliche as it sounds, everything started and eventually ended on Halloween. I saw him for the first time when I was 14. I was out with a few of my friends on our way to a party when I saw a man leaning against a light pole staring at me with his arms crossed and a smirk on his face. I didn't know what his costume was supposed to be, but whatever it was, he nailed it. His skin was white, not pale, white, almost like someone had poured a bucket of white paint over him. His clothes weren't that unusual, just black pants and a black shirt, but the contrast to his skin made it seem all the more sinister. It wasn't until his smirk spread into a smile that I realized that he had really gone all out. All of his teeth were pointed like something out of a movie. The way he was staring and smiling at me was starting to make me nervous, so I tapped one of my friends on the shoulder. "Hey Ryan, check this guy out." "Who?" Ryan asked, scanning the crowd. "The really pale guy leaning against the pole," I said, pointing straight at him. "I don't see anything." As Ryan said it, the man locked eyes with me and shook his head. I glanced around real quick as the realization hit me. I guess he took off. Forget it. Something was wrong. This was exactly the kind of guy all the parents walking around with small children would be avoiding. But no one but me even seemed to notice he was there. I figured if I was the only one who could see him, then I should probably keep it to myself. That was hardly the last time I saw him. He was everywhere I went. He never followed me into buildings, but all I had to do was look at a window and he'd be there. Every time without fail, leaning against something, with his arms crossed and that same smirk on his face. I tried asking him questions, but he never responded. Not even to the extent of that first night. The only time he ever actually followed me into a building was when I finally got desperate enough to go to a church for help. But I'm pretty sure that was just to show me that he wouldn't be deterred. After that, I did what most people my age would do. I got used to having him around, and he simply became part of the background. Sometimes he even became useful. I used him to vent my frustrations, and his unending patience eventually turned him into a calming presence in my mind. After all, he was always there. Before long, I started referring to him as my friend. I didn't see him react to anything past that first night until about 6 months later. My parents were at dinner, and my sister was at a friend's house, so I ordered pizza and settled in for a night of movies on the 55-inch, usually reserved for my dad. At around 9 o'clock that night, there was a loud bang on the front door. I had been watching a horror movie, so this made me jump several feet. After I calmed down, I glanced out the window at my friend and immediately knew something was wrong. He wasn't leaning against his usual streetlight. He was standing up straight and stiff. His arms weren't closed, they were at his sides, and his hands were balled into fists. His smirk was gone, as was the hint of amusement I always saw in his pale yellow eyes. Whatever had banged on my door had my friend spooked, which only served to freak me out more. I moved as silently as I could to the front door and looked through the peephole, but all I saw was a pale green eye. As soon as I looked through, whatever it was banged on the front door again, then started growling and snarling as whatever it was clawed at the front door. I ran to my parents' room and went for my dad's pistol and called the police from my cell phone. The police arrived a few minutes later and found deep dents and claw marks covering the door. While they were calling my parents, I looked across the street and saw my friend back to his old self, the only exception being the claw marks oozing what looked like black blood on his left bicep and on his face, both of which were gone the next day. This was the first attack of many. Something happened at least one night every month. with one of the major exceptions being December when I was 15. That month, something happened every night, be it banging on the roof or the sound of claws being scraped across my window, and after every incident, my friend would have new wounds. Everything came to a head on Halloween when I was 16. A family friend gave me an SKS for my birthday that year. An SKS is a carbine rifle similar to the AK-47 for non-gun enthusiasts, and I kept it loaded and next to my bed, just in case. That night there was just enough light coming through the window to illuminate part of my bed, but the rest of the room was completely dark. I was almost asleep when I felt something grab my right leg at the ankle. I was awake immediately and kicked hard, shaking my attacker loose, then pulled myself into the lighted part of the room. My attacker had no choice but to come into the light, and I finally saw what had been tormenting me for the better part of 2 years. It was tall, close to 7 feet tall, and didn't seem to have a neck. Instead, its shoulders seemed to be part of its head. Its arms were almost too long for its body. It had 4 spider-like fingers on each hand, all tipped with claws. Its sand-colored body didn't look very impressive, maybe 6 inches across the abdomen, but it was the eyes that made me hesitate. They were 2 thin lines on its head, both with a distinctive red tint. As soon as I broke out of shock, I reached for my gun, but the creature was faster. It grabbed my right arm and scratched part of my arm. I still have the scar. Before the creature could do whatever it was supposed to do with me, my friend came out of the shadows, grabbed it, pulling it away from me. I couldn't make out the battle happening in the dark, but I heard hissing, scratching, my lamp breaking, and at one point, the crushing of drywall. After a few minutes, my friend came back with a splotch of black blood on its face and one of its shoulders hanging lower than it should. And then, for the first time, he said something to me, but with an accent I couldn't identify. He simply said, "I apologize for being late." I never saw him again after that, but I was never terrorized at night again either. I don't think that he was some messenger from God trying to save me from demons or anything like that. My theory is that there is good and evil in demons just like there is in humanity. I just saw both sides. So if you ever have a weird pale guy with a very realistic costume, be careful, because he might be trying to save you.